basically we're in prison. There was water and bread half the time and bouncing boiled chicken. So any chance the boys could go off the path and get some takeaways, we would. So we waited for Gordon Titchens to go through customs. We will send one of the young boys out. Has he gone through? Yes, he's had his passport stamp. He's gone through security. He can't come back. So we all went to McDonald's. We thought, nah, we'll sweet it. So we went to McDonald's, got a big order. Next minute, Titchens walks back through and finds us. I've never seen 12 guys just leave a whole lot of food the night. So how do you get through customs and come back? To this day, I don't know, but he managed it. It's your boy KT, and you're listening to the Rugby Hive with Dallen and Robin.
Today's guest is New Zealand legend Karl Tenana. He was part of the famous New Zealand Sevens side that won the first 5 series titles on the HSBC World Rugby 7 series. Tanana captained the All Black Sevens team, winning the prestigious Rugby World Cup Sevens in Hong Kong in 2001. In his career, he scored a remarkable 113 tries for the NZ 7 squad, and was the leading try scorer in the 2000-2001 series with 42 5-pointers. Despite picking up an injury, he won a gold medal at the 2002 Commonwealth Games. He played Super Rugby for the Otago Highlanders and Rugby League for the Pirates. Since retiring, he's become one of the world's best commentators, working at events like Super Rugby, Sevens World Series, and recently the 2019 Rugby World Cup in Japan. In today's episode, we talk about growing up in New Zealand, playing Super Rugby with many All Black legends, the Sevens life under Sir Gordon Titchens, the days of 20-minute Sevens Cup finals, and how the series has evolved over the past 2 decades. We chat about his commentating career, meeting David Hasselhoff, plus who he picks as his best ever Sevens squad. Here is New Zealand legend Karl Tenana.
He's so dangerous, Freddy Krueger has nightmares about him!
Hello and welcome to the Rugby Hive. I'm Dallen Stanford, and despite my South African accent, I was fortunate enough to play rugby for the United States on the Sevens World Series.
And I'm MacDowell, a former Canadian Sevens international. Back in my playing days, I went head-to-head against Dallen in the USA.
For several years, Robin has coached international Sevens for various countries, including Canada and Mexico. He's massively passionate about growing the game across the Americas through his MacDowell rugby programs at all levels. I'm currently a commentator for World Rugby, most recently broadcasting the Rugby World Cup in Japan, as well as the amazing Sevens World Series.
More than a decade later, we are teaming up to bring you insights from legendary players and coaches from around the world.
All legends have a story. The Rugby Hive podcast is here to share it.
Welcome to the Hive.
Oh, he's more dangerous than climate change!
Welcome to episode 20 in the year 2020. It's been quite the adventure talking with international players and coaches from across the globe. This is our first season of Rugby Hive, and a huge honor and a pleasure this week. It's the return of the All Black Sevens captain, Karl Tenana, on the show, a man who has teammates with the legends like John Alomu, Christian Cullen, Eric Rush, and a million other players. Known as KT, he's a Zulu warrior in the broadcasting world. And that's where we met, traveling the globe, talking sevens, shredding each other, sinking a few cold jars, running up walls, and enjoying the privilege of international commentary together. KT, definitely one of my favorite people, extremely humble, genuine, reliable, and also one of the fittest quacherburgers around. He's even more elusive than you sometimes, Robin.
Yeah, he was telling us about his training workouts, and it was wonderful catching up to him early on in the COVID lockdown kind of phase 1, and he had a whole house full of kids exercising and eating and playing around. This is the best part for us, was just getting a first window into the New Zealand season that was, as far as the Super Rugby, which he covered, and then ultimately the North-South games. So it was cool to get some insights into the All Black Sevens world and the infamous Gordon Titchens training regimes, as well as some dietary stories, which buckled us up a few times. Yeah, one of the classiest guys on the World Series and World Rugby, and he's a supporter of both the men and women's game, and always brings so much energy, like yourself, when he's on the mic. So looking forward to our audience getting after it this week.
And then, Pal, let's talk about mental health awareness. I know it's a cause close to our hearts and something you're raising money for as well.
Yeah, obviously it's Movember around the globe, i.e. my thick upper lip, but in all seriousness, it's to bring awareness to men's mental health. You know, there's a lot going on in the world right now with COVID, with people being stuck at home, with not being able to see each other, be active. And obviously, financially, there's been a lot of challenges across the globe. Unfortunately, we lost a rugby brother yesterday, Christophe Dominici, from legendary Stade Francais, French international, part of the famous 1999 World Cup team that upset the All Blacks. And ultimately, that upset motivated me to move to France and learn that style of play. But he was a small man that played 10 times his size, and a big inspiration for a lot of young rugby players around the world. And we just want to send our best to his rugby teammates, his friends, his family, and everybody out there. He's in our thoughts.
Yeah, well said there, Robin. It definitely is sad news to hear in the rugby world. I'll never forget watching that semi-final when he scored one of the most unbelievable tries. I remember I was lying on the couch watching, thinking, oh, New Zealand will probably win by 40 points or so. And then France came back. He scored one of the most unbelievable pieces of magic, jumping off the couch, going wild. I'd never been a massive French supporter per se, but that day it was all blue, it was all France. It was fantastic. You're right. It definitely inspired more than just his nation, people from all over the world. And then, Robin, anything else on your side so far? Any other news to report?
No, just, and of course, we just got the news about Maradona in Argentina, the poster boy for global soccer or football. And most importantly for our beloved friends to the south in Argentina. So again, sending lots of love and prayers to Santi and all the Argentinian men and women, and of course everybody across their country as well. We've lost another iconic athlete that has inspired the globe. Sad couple of days in sports.
It really is the hand of God. I actually got fairly close to him, a few rows connected to him. I found that photo. It was actually the 2015 Rugby World Cup in England. I went with a friend and we were at Twickenham watching Argentina. We're playing in the Final Four as well. And Diego Maradona was a few seats behind us, So we were like, wow, there's the hand of God, as he is known. And he had a huge group around him. Everybody wanted to get a photo or get an autograph or even just touch his hand with that head scored that amazing goal back then, So definitely thoughts out to the community. All right, switching gears, a couple of things to report from my side. Last week, I was, for the first time, back in the commentary booth. It was meant to be for 2 matches. It ended up just being for 1, but it was the Rugby Town National Training Center, which is in Denver, Colorado, in a place called Glendale, and that's the new home of USA Rugby, which also hosts the men's and women's national 15s sides. The women's side, preparing for Rugby World Cup 2021, had a scrimmage with 49 of their players, Stars v Stripes. Very entertaining clash, some great scores in the second half, but their second match, unfortunately, was cancelled because 2 players contracted COVID and they tested positive. So our thoughts and prayers are with them for a speedy recovery, particularly during Thanksgiving. We know everybody's with their families during this time. But the Rugby World Cup gives us an opportunity as well to talk about the pool draw, which happened. Karl Tenana was involved with that, in fact, our guest who is on today. The tournament's played in New Zealand next year, September, October. Pool A has New Zealand, Australia, Wales, and the final qualification winner. Pool C has England, France, South Africa, and Fiji. And Pool B, which is close to our hearts, has Robin's Canada, my USA, plus Europe 1 and Asia 1, which Asia 1 could potentially be Japan, and Leslie McKenzie, who was on last week, might be there with her side.
Yeah, when we were releasing last week's episode, I was in contact with her on a few phone calls and texting, and I think she's losing sleep right now. And I told her, just focus on your own process. Obviously excited for them to go pan deep. Actually, 3 of my favorites are in this pool. Unfortunately, at a pinnacle event, you gotta come ready to play every single game. And she talks about it obviously in last week's episode. But just what the Japan men have done as far as laying that groundwork mentally, that self-belief that Japan can conquer, that their country can conquer is so powerful, and how that's done a favor for their team's culture. There'll definitely be some side wagers where one of us will be wearing an opposing country's jersey. I think you look beautiful in red.
Yes, exactly. Well, I'll mail your USA kit to you this week, so you have it just in case, because there's going to be some ups and downs along the way. But then listen, pal, and then next week, I'm involved in quite an exciting fundraiser. It's for the Ruck ALS Foundation, and they're hosting an online Zoom chat, so anybody can donate to the foundation any amount of money. That gives you access to the chat room. I'll be moderating and hosting with 2 guests. Will be Mike Friday and Chris Brown, both USA Rugby legends and World Rugby Coaches of the Year in 2019, and that's happening on December 3rd. And that's 8:30 p.m. Eastern. So there'll be more information online about that. That's for the Ruck ALS Foundation. And then support for the Rugby Hive podcast is brought to you by Gilbert Rugby Canada, Brand Marinade, and Focus Care Products. And if you like what we're doing, please review us. Please share this. Please go on our socials at Rugby Hive on Twitter and Facebook, at My Rugby Hive on Insta. And now it's time for episode number 20. One of my all-time favorites on the field, and particularly in the last 5 or 6 years commentating. with KT, my friend. You're honestly one of the most humble people I know, with a long, long resume. It's really a joy to travel with you just because you're just such a good spirit on and off the field, my friend. Hello and welcome.
Hey, boys, always a nice way to be introduced. I don't know about that Raptors top. I'll have to get you an old Glory DC one to fit you there, Dallen. But it's good to catch up with you and Robin. It's a strange time, but it's always nice to be able to hook up and talk some code.
And pal, tell me the things you've been keeping busy with. I know you've had your nephew there, and he's quite a laugh and has been keeping you on point on the social media vibes.
Yes, yeah, no, we've been like we've been talking about ever since every country's been on lockdown. Everything's gone online, so been idiots and doing some skills in the backyard. I don't know how you de-skill, but I've managed to do that, and doing some boot camps because, as you know, I don't like my food, so I've got to find some way to work it off.
I was going to say, we had Joel Stransky on the other day, and between Joel and you, the two fittest people I know to this day, every day there's some sort of workout planned, and you guys, doesn't matter what happened the night before, the day before, you're on it, and that's big respect to you for there, my friend.
And if you're going to eat the chocolates, you got to do the work, my mate. But Joel, he rides around. I think you commentated, and how many times did he ride around in a circle? 250 million?
Oh, easily. He set world records, indoor world records. He normally does 80 mile or whatever it is, 160 Ks, just carving it up. So now I think the lockdown actually has affected him the most because he really couldn't get out and do anything, and he's a bit of ADD. He says he has, so he needs to get his space. Well, listen, let's go back all the way to when you were a youngster. Give us a bit of background and what was it like growing up in your household, and what sort of things did you get up to? Yeah,
I mean, rugby's always been a part of the family. The granddad played rugby representatively, and so did dad. So it was always the thing for us to have a ball. It wasn't necessarily a rugby ball, a tennis ball, a cricket ball was in the hands a lot of the time. And I mean, for us as kids, if you stayed inside, you don't get any chores. So as soon as we got breakfast over and done with, we had a ball and we were gone. So it's just getting outside and mucking around. And probably the earliest memories for me in rugby is playing bare feet. And at 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays, your toes are stinging. You're out there running around and parents watching you. So it was always good times.
As a Canadian boy growing up on this side of the pond, Karl, we most of us grew up playing ice hockey and baseball, and then in school, it was multi-sport, but obviously hockey is kind of stuffed down your throat. So the current generation of Canadians, most of them have grown up playing rugby. You're around the same generations as Dallen and I, so I'm just kind of curious, you touched on a bit, what other sports were you heavily into in your teenage years? Yeah, I think for us, it was broken into two. So you had the summer sports. We were a health family, was huge on tennis, actually. So we used to always Christmas time, we'd have competitions with our neighbours and then go across the local school and have the Nine-Eye Open, as it was called, where a suburb we used to live down in Wellington. And cricket was a big one for us as well. It was the biggest summer sport in New Zealand, and heaps of our heroes played cricket. So we were always into that as well. And any racket sport, I'll be honest, we used to have in sevens, actually. We had a bit of a thing going with our coach, Gordon Titchens. He's mad on tennis. So me and one of the other guys who were at the Pookie would team up, and Titch would team up normally with one of the management, a physio or something, and we'd go around and play racket sports. So it got quite intense, actually. So because Titch rates himself, he's got an awesome serve, but as we know, his knees are bowed up like he used, like a cowboy. So if he just dropped it short, he had nothing. So and he was angry too. He's competitive as heck. So it was awesome just making him run and watching him. That's all we could get back, because once he had the whistle in training, we were going to get killed for 3 hours. I remember hearing the stories when I played against you guys. He's crazy for the tennis. He watches it religiously.
Yeah, and I think it was maybe coming home last year from London, and someone had hooked up him getting a signed racket from Roger Federer. Roger Federer is his favourite. So I think it might have been Paris, actually. It was Paris. I saw him in the airport, and he'd obviously gotten it off Roger's entourage. So I was going to pinch it, but I thought he might cry.
He wouldn't be able to catch you anymore.
He's had hip replacement, so he's actually put a couple of inches on himself, I reckon.
He'll work smart. Going back to your early days, and obviously following you on the World Series, and you do such a great job of telling everybody else's story. So I said to Dallen, I really want to hear KT's story. So do you remember your first game you ever played, and what was it like when you first got some space?
As a little kid, you like I was saying to Dallen, just those early morning Saturdays of running around in bare feet, is always something, a memory that stands out for mine. And it's a hard one. I always knew I was quite quick, but it's a bit of a shock when you come up against someone that's quicker, and there's always going to be someone a bit quicker. So me and one of these other guys in a little country town called Palmerston North here in New Zealand, where parents were working for a little while. I remember playing along there, and I thought I was the man until I got run around by this other guy. We actually became good mates throughout the early parts of school and made all the representative teams in Manawatu. So, I mean, it was always cool to be a part of that. And I think the thing that's, as I went through the grades that I found out is, even though I knew I had a bit of talent, I think once I figured out that the harder I worked, the more it didn't become a fluke. It was more of a habit, and that sort of led me on to some pretty cool things. So I think that's one thing that I've really taken away from the career.
Yeah, speaking of those pretty cool things, let's go into your first representative experience, if you will. Was it North Harbour? Was that the team you started with?
Wellington,
yeah. So tell us a bit about that experience once you bust in. You know, what was that like coming, as you said, from a small town? Now you're playing alongside, some big names, right?
Yeah, well, I left school, went to university back at where my parents lived, and that was in Wellington. So I went to Victoria University down there, and my granddad, we got a family club, Petone, and when I first turned up, I stayed with my grandparents. I was living with them, and my granddad sat me down and goes, right, you've got to pick a rugby club. And he goes, you can go to any club in Wellington you like as long as it's Petone. I was all right then. Well, apparently we're off to Petone. So his son played there, the uncles all played there. So my son ended up playing there. So, and at the time, a lot of the representative players, All Blacks and what have you, played club rugby. So Tony was one of the stronger clubs. Mara St. Pat's was another one. If you cracked into our Petone's first grade team, you basically made the Wellington team. So we had guys like Tana Umanga, Jason Halloran, they were the midfield, ended up being All Blacks. Tim Mannix was an All Black hooker. His brother, Simon Mannix, was an All Black first five, and ended up having a Samoan international and Alex Talia on one wing and I was on the other. So basically that was our Wellington backline, but just cracking into that first grade at club level led me on to that Wellington team as well. And it was quite comforting for me being around guys I played club with to be able to crack into the first grade and provincial level and able to, just be with the boys and a lot of the times, as you guys know, that's when you play your best rugby.
You played at Super Rugby then, right? And that was at a time when people understood the format and the competition and, probably followed it more closely at times, right? So what was your Super Rugby experience like and traveling around with your teammates?
Yeah, well, actually, I think it was 2000. We just won in Hong Kong. Got the call up straight afterwards that, I had to shoot back and the Highlanders wanted me. So got on the first plane out after drinking orange juices all night there and honkers, and then straight into it. Actually, that following week we had to play the Crusaders down in Christchurch, and 3/4 of the team were All Blacks with the Highlanders back in those days with Jeff Wilson and those sort of dudes. And I got on well with Jeff throughout age grades and knew him quite well. And he actually put me up in his house. So I was his roomie, and he gave me his All Black car because he was the man. He was the number one wing. He was the man. So to be able to be taken in by him and learn under his tutelage, like the top fullback winger back in those days. So he moved to fullback. I went to one wing, and Rico Gear was on the other wing. So it's got a first try on my first match for the Highlanders, and this is during the game. One of the boys, Mark Ellis, who was the All Black centre, we're running back to a halfway, and he goes, "You know what? If you score a try in your first game, you have to scull a jug." And that's all I can remember about for the rest of the game is having to scull this jug. So and it ended up being Anton Oliver's 50th game. So straight after the game, when they changed rooms, we got brought up to the front and, all right, newbie, you got to scull a jug. And they had little plastic ones, which is fine, but then they brought out the double-sized litre glass jugs. And so Anton got to pick, since it was the 50th, which jug he wanted. And we played all schoolboys together at New Zealand with Anton, and he goes, which one do you want? And I said, the little one, please. So he just downed it. But that was one of the lasting memories. And they were all cool dudes down there. They're really, really nice.
And did you get a chance to tour South Africa during that time?
Yeah, no, really lucky. It's as you know, I know you love the place, and was lucky enough to go there a few times with the sevens. But I mean, 15s is a different level, very, very much a different level. And it was that was the first experience I sort of got of how much of a religion rugby is in the Republic, And we walked down the street, and everyone knew you were there, and they'd come up to you. Every person was really nice. We're going to beat you, we're going to kick you, we're going to waste you this weekend, but in a nice way, in a very nice way. And one of the first times, like I tell you, where we got into Bobby Skinstad's part of town. So we got into the Cape, we're down there and just playing the Stormers, and a few of the lads, we went out just to have a meal and a couple of beers on a Tuesday, I think it was. And as soon as we got into this place, we didn't know it was Bobby's joint, in a pub back in those days. And we rocked up, just went to order one beer. The next minute, the lady goes, "Oh, sorry, we can't serve you." We're going, "Oh, oh, okay, is everything all right? He goes, no, the boss said he's paying for the night. So he just sent over this whole lot of drinks for our table, filled it up, and goes, welcome to South Africa. I mean, that was my introduction to that at Super Rugby level. So, oh, well, I think he knew, though, because we got hammered that weekend.
I was going to say, it's a tactic, right? That's why he went into that. He had that side business, and all the teams would go there first and enjoy it too much, for the whole week. So epic. What a brilliant time, man.
Yeah, he's a legend. Really good mates with Bobby, and he's just the nicest bloke, But I'll be honest, like, that's one of the most intimidating places I played in Newlands. Just with even driving up to the ground in our buses, and people like banging on the windows, and stuff, and you run out and it's got those cages, was what we don't get in New Zealand, and people rattling on them. It's a real football.
And those were just your fans, because you're a lot of South African fans to support New Zealand too,
Yeah, but man, it was unreal. It was something that we're just not used to, and see, we're not getting towed up.
I remember after my first time in George, everybody's mobbed up and just begging for kit. So I gave away all our kit, and I had some socks. Like back in those days, my cleats were too big, so I'd wear 2 pairs of long socks, and I'd worn probably my extra pair, like my lucky under socks. I wore them probably for 6 games in Dubai and 6 games in George, and I'm over the fence, like I have no kit left, and I say to this guy, and he's like, "I want those for my boy, like anything coming off, because they just got these tents outside," and I'm like, "I've worn these probably 12 games in the last 2 weeks." He's like, "I don't care." So over the fence they go, and then we had nothing left, and I remember my best friend at the time, Derek Daypuck, he goes, "Well," they're like, "Can we have that apple? Can you autograph that apple?" So his nickname is Pucker. So Pucker autographs this apple, and he autographed Wayne Gretzky 99, because obviously we weren't famous, and they wouldn't know who Wayne Gretzky was. So as we're driving away, I'm telling him the story about the socks, and he's telling the story about the Wayne Gretzky 99 green apple. We're driving away, and this guy's waving at us as we're going down the road. He's got my sock with holes on it, and he's got this apple in his hand. It was my first tour. It was amazing. So switching gears, what was it like to transition to rugby league for you?
Well, it was a funny old one, because I just come back from playing in Japan, and brought the family home, and we're starting to go into the afterlife after rugby, and always been a fan of rugby league. I used to play Union on a Saturday here when I moved to North Harbour, and go watch the Warriors on a Sunday, because I had a few mates playing in there. And I suppose this is the only chance we had to play with each other, because a couple of those guys, they were playing for the Warriors, went back to the juniors club, and it was the worst of the worst. Like, there was 3 grades in New Zealand, and they were the bottom of the 3rd grade. So it was they was in a pretty rough spot. So a couple of the ex-Warriors boys said, right, we're going to use our profile, go back to our junior club, and we're going to get a couple of the boys to come and play, So my mate rang me up and goes, "Oh, you want to have a jam at rugby league?" And I said, "No, not really." He says, "Oh, well, too bad, I've registered you." So ended up going along and having a run with the boys, and it was a unique type of environment, because rugby league supporters are very different to rugby union supporters. They're pretty rough riders, the old leagueies, and the wife actually played league, so she was keen for me to have a nudge, and I said, "All right, we'll have a go." And in the first game I had, the first 40 minutes, I probably tackled more in that 140 minutes than I did in my whole rugby career. I'm ready to pull pin, but it was really cool people, and really cool vibe. And our club was really lucky. Like, we get more people watching at our games than they did at provincial level, just because we had so many ex-superstars, So it was really cool to be able to just play with some of the normal lads and win the competition. And now they've probably won the top grade here in New Zealand in the last 4 years. So it's led on to what it is now. And but a really, really cool time. One of the boys actually this week sent me a photo of us from that team. So it was 10 years ago. So it's it was a funny old time. But like, I could only play because I was working, doing the commentary on the weekends, and so I'd play when I could. And you know what it's like, if you go on and play contact, then you'll be really sore, for the next 2 or 3 days after that. And like, playing once every 3 weeks, it's like you're restarting every time. So the body was battling.
Yeah, not something you want to jump into near the end of your career.
Well, the thing is, it's 3rd grade, and there's no refs, so they're taking you like the chin upwards, and just trying, because you're on TV and a name, they're just trying to take your heads off, and it was unreal. And there's one time we're playing in the middle of Auckland City. There's a little ground there, and afterwards we all went in for a shower with the 2 teams, and the showers weren't working, so we all these 4 teams were using the fire hose. That's all there was to clean yourself. So I was thinking, I went from playing at the Twickenham to playing in the middle of Auckland, a suburban ground with a fire hose to have a shower. That was cool. It was cool time.
Back to rugby sevens, our main passion here. For me growing up, even in Canada, I knew about Gordon Titchens and followed the series for a number of years. What were your first impressions like playing for Titch? And what are some qualities you admire about him?
Yeah, toughness. I remember my very first training session with the New Zealand Sevens team, and I'd heard about all the stories like everyone else, but seeing the reality and being amongst it, it's two different things, I can experience it. And it was a real eye-opener. When I got called in, it was for a World Cup qualifier in Portugal. So I did the training, we did the training camp, went over to Portugal, and I've done this before. Like, we're beating teams at the tournament, Portugal, where it was all these other sides, like 90-0, 110-0, all these huge scores. I didn't get one try the whole tournament, So our for was about 2,689 and against was 0. And that was the same as me. My tally was 0, because the body just wasn't used to the training, wasn't used to the fitness levels and the fatigue, so it just couldn't operate. But what I sort of realised, I love the environment that he created, and the thing I sort of figured out as my career went along and had more experience with him is just the mental toughness that he brought. And that's why I suppose his teams have been so successful, because we're never the fittest. Well, I shouldn't say fittest. We probably weren't the most athletic or fastest or biggest, but we're the mentally toughest and we were the fittest. So we knew if we could hang into the fight and make teams go away from their plan A and use their plan B, that 9 times out of 10 would be there or thereabouts. And that's where our mental capabilities sort of won us a day a lot of the times.
Yeah, I remember the first time we had a hit up with New Zealand, just a pre-tournament training match in George. We were playing it basically on a dirt parking lot against some of the other sides, but we got to have a training match to New Zealand. It was about 2 hours out of town, and the red carpet was pulled out. When we weren't on the field, we'd just be sitting in the shade drinking water, and then our subs, our 5 guys, and then the New Zealand 5 guys would be in the end zone doing sprints the entire half, like full on having it. And I felt lazy, when you're sitting around and watching somebody else work. And I was always the fittest one, like in the national team. So my story, it took 7 years to crack the squad. And so I had to be the fittest. So I prided myself in that. Then I was looking over at those boys and I was like, man, I guess that's why they're at the top of the charts. But just literally the intimidating factor, that professional environment back in that day, that he really paved the way.
Yeah, and I think the thing is too, mate, it's a good point that you make. I think it's all about habits, and pushing yourself past your physical capabilities that normally you think you can go to. Some people think, oh yeah, I'm gone now, this is me. Whereas to get to that point, and that's when he pushes you hard, and that's when you get your most gain. You know what it's like. You two both know what it's like on the field when you're absolutely exhausted, but just getting the first couple of steps going, and then you get into your jog, and then you're into your sprint, and then you're back into the next place. So it's just getting those into your habits, regardless of what your body's telling you. I think that's probably been one of his main focus points. And I'll be honest, it's probably why a lot of guys who hadn't been in the Sevens program went on to be All Blacks, because they got that mental toughness and that ability to push through those pain barriers and take themselves to where they probably couldn't have gone if they hadn't gone through that system. So it's probably something that a lot of guys can be thankful for through Titch.
And KT, talking about those early years, I mean, you're probably closest placed to have played in the series the very first few years that were going on, and you guys were carving it up as NZ, and then you've been commentating now for a long time. So take us back to what was the series like back when you started playing, and how's it different now?
Legitimately different tactics, that's for sure. The physicality, I wouldn't say was, it was different. It was, you get away with a lot more things, especially in the bottom of rucks, even though there was only 3 or 4 people in there, you could definitely get away with a lot more things. The scrums were a bit different and the lineouts were totally different. So that's one thing, I suppose, that has changed over the years. It's been slimlined to a degree, I think, now, and I just hope it doesn't get to the point where it's too sanitised. I still think rugby, regardless of its whatever facet you play, I think it still should be a physical contest, and I think that's the difference in sevens. When I was playing, you could still have those hard, big contacts and rucks, or proper rucks back in those days too. You could use the 21-inch plastics. You have that physical contest at the breakdown, at the tackle. I think sometimes, it's been taken away a little bit too much in the game of sevens, or it's getting blind too much towards the game of touch rugby. I still think, as you guys know, would have still been in your guys' day too, where you can put a big shot on, as long as it's legal. I'm talking, as long as it's all legal in those terms, but I think sometimes it's been taken away too much at the moment. It's something I'd like to come back. And there's one thing in particular when they're trying to get people from behind and grab them on their shoulders, like, I think that should be allowed. obviously anything with the head, that's a no-no. We all get that. But the defender to try stop an offload when you're chasing someone's so tough, So I think that's something we need to have a bit more common sense around.
Yeah, I was going to say, if any of us had to play now under the current criteria, right, we probably would be sent off, I do remember, early when I was playing, it was a thing to, pick somebody up and tackle them on the ground. You're not going to drive their head, but you're going to tackle them and dump them, and that's a good tackle, if you will. So you're right. It's kind of funny now that when we're commentating, we're like, oh, we should never have done that player.
Yeah, and the thing is too, like, what's really prevalent in the game of sevens is yellow cards. I know it all comes back down to safety, which is paramount for the players. We all get that, but a lot of the times it's not. I can't remember the last time a tournament didn't have a yellow card or someone sent off, and that was a rare thing when we were playing. And to be fair, some of our stuff was quite bad, and you couldn't have that nowhere near. You could have that now, but I think sometimes like I said, we need to come back and revise it and get that physicalness back into our game, as long as it's legal and shoulders below,
Yeah, exactly. Now, you had a bunch of brilliant characters in your team. The NZ7's infamous for Eric Rush, and because you wrote some great books and stories, and I was going through a few of them recently.
The comic books, mate. The comic books, they're
exactly,
all lies.
All lies, but so funny and just great characters. And that's kind of what we really love about the sport as well. So do you have any stories that you could share with us about traveling with those early years?
We were really lucky. Like you say, we did have some guys that were out of the box. And I think that's the thing that Gordon Titchens and Eric Rush provided, was a great environment to just be yourself. I mean, some of our guys are just on some tangents no one knows, but that didn't matter to us. You're all still on the same buzz. And I remember one time we're at Auckland Airport, and Gordon Titchens, such a nutritionist nerd that, he basically we're in prison. There was water and bread half the time and bouncy boiled chicken. So any chance the boys could go off the path and get some takeaways, we would. So we waited for Gordon Titchens to go through customs. We send one of the young boys out. Has he gone through? Yes, he's had his passport stamp. He's gone through security. He can't come back. So we all went to McDonald's. We thought, nah, we'll sweep it. So we went to McDonald's, got a big order. Next minute, Titchens walks back through and finds us. I've never seen 12 guys just leave a whole lot of food the night. So how do you get through customs and come back? To this day, I don't know, but he managed it.
He just knew. He knew there was something up with you guys.
He knew because the team hadn't followed him. He was looking around for us. He knew what we were doing. He was a shocker, mate. Like, honestly, he was a shocker. Even like we'd have our camps in a particular town. He would go around the dormitories, and if the boys weren't in their dormitories, he knew we were in town trying to have a feature. He would get in his car and drive around the town to try and find us at all the takeaway joints. Get content.
He did. He went to the next level, but he got the results, right?
I can't say I'm any better as a coach, KT. As Dallen alluded to, I took over Mexico. I was consulting kind of for the first 2-3 years when I took over as head coach. We didn't have much numbers. We didn't have much anything, but we stayed in a 1960-odd Olympic training center, and I was rebuilding the program, and we brought in a lot of young girls from across Mexico. I really dug under stones to find these athletes. You leave the compound, which is 4 layers of security, and I'm thinking, I'm always naive, oh, they're not going to leave. And then I find out from some of the older girls that this girl snuck in these chips and these candies, and yeah, they'd straight up be hauling in this junk. And so I had to lay it down, and I said, like, we don't have the resources or the athletes or the time or the funding to not be all in. And Titch and I would probably agree on a lot of things back then. And then I had to learn that once they got tight, then I started buying them ice cream on tour and stuff like that. But yeah, as a coach, it's kind of tough. You lose sleep at night over the little things. And when you look back to being a player, it's a lot easier being a player.
Well, that's the thing too, and you got to figure out and find ways to galvanise these players. And like you say, if that's the way to do it, and like you say, if you don't have those resources like the big nations do, you have to put those extra 1%ers in, because that's going to make the difference when you start getting into dark places. When you do get a treat, like I said before, it's habits. Once you get into those habits, you do get a treat. It's like the best thing in the world, So don't blame. I've been brought up that way, and when I still coach too, I get a bit like that. So I got no judgments here.
Yeah, and like you said about 5 minutes ago to Dallen, it's you got to put in the work so you get the chocolate. So it's all about balance in our lives.
Yeah, and I just coached my daughter's netball team just before the lockdown, and I've coached their sides as well, and I've implemented a lot of the rugby stuff, and the old habits come in, I know I was telling Dallen this, you learn out that you can't speak to women, like you do boys, and lips that sort of went, bit shaky there, so I had to pull myself in, go into the corner. They were talking. When I was talking, get on the line. Hey, the boys don't. When you get on the line, it's just time to be quiet. But girls, very different.
They run the show. Just going back to your World Series days, you were Dallen's got some notes put together here. You won 4 World Series titles, and obviously back then it was a lot of New Zealand Fiji clashes. What made your squad so consistent in your playing days?
Well, Dallen's, I thought he was the ultimate nerd. It's actually 5.
5. No. Listen, I was stitching him up. I was trying to get him.
I only know that because someone said it to me the other day. That's all.
You know what? What I will say, they need to update your page online. I mean, I'm trying to get up-to-date stats. I know you scored, 113 tries? That's just off the top of my head. They didn't even list that properly, So I got to update that page for you.
Yeah, and gave away another 100 too, just to the young guys to give them some confidence, mate. You know what it's like.
I threw him under the bus before I threw out a number here. Sorry.
Well, that's because you run around Dallen. You don't, the Dallen's still trying to get you back. You ran around.
Shake and bake.
Shake and bake. Sorry, what were you asking? I got off the topic.
Yeah, no, all good. Just back in the day, it was mainly a New Zealand-Fiji clash. And what made you guys so consistent in those days?
I think depth of squad was something that we were really big on. And I think that was a real secret of ours. I know it's probably stands out a lot more now with teams that have good squad, not a good starting 7 are the ones that predominantly are at the top of the table come year's end, and that was something that we were really big on, and the environment created it. It was a good day if we didn't have a fight at training, and it's not to say we went out and were brutes, but that's how intense our trainings were, and every player bought into it. So if some guy got injured at a camp or on tour, the next guy he was war ready, so we wouldn't have a dip in performance, and that's something we prided ourselves on, and something we gave thanks to as soon as we left the shores or the team was picked, that we'd only be in this position because of our brothers were pushing us to be there, and Titch would pick his team depending on what he wanted in those particular tournaments, and something that we really thrived on. And the physicality we knew at the time of Fiji was the mainstay, that's something we'd have to bring, and we had to play a few mind games with them, so we needed mentally tough guys. And there was a point there Australia was really good, and you probably couldn't get to them so much mentally, so we have to play a different game against them. We'd try and impose ourselves more so physically on them at ruck times and things like that. And Samoa, there was a point there where they were really coming up, so they were a team that you had to sort of play a hybrid type of game against them, So that's probably some of the secrets that paved the way for us initially.
And of your long list of achievements, where does that gold medal win at the 2002 Manchester Games fall in for you?
I haven't seen this very much, lads, but to be honest, not high for me personally. It was a pretty tough tournament. I'd come in on the back of a back complaint coming out of Super Rugby. I had a bulged disc, and I just tried to get through past the Com Games and then have an operation. And then so it was a real battle just to get on the plane. And then when we got there and we were in camp, I went again. So I actually didn't play the final. I was no good to go. So that was probably one of the most heartbreaking moments I've had in my rugby career, to watch the lads win their gold medal and for me not to be able to physically be a part of it, So that was really tough. It was a really tough one. So it was a great environment. Like, the experience was awesome, and being part of a wider team, not just your group per se, and be able to mix with guys I really looked up to, because I ran a lot of track when I was younger, and so did my dad. So Frankie Frederick was a sprinter back in those days, and watching him live and being able to do that was a real experience. But as an actual tournament for me, I wasn't the best. That's a memory. I don't know if it's a good one for me, but those things make you stronger, make you want to come back and help you improve. So it led me on to go from the lows for that to win a World Cup and be able to lead my country to do that. Through Rushy's demise, unfortunately broke his leg, was probably one of the high points for me. So a big tournament where Rushy probably won the gold medal, and he was up on the high, to him getting injured, not be able to be on the podium to receive the World Cup, and something he wasn't able to achieve in his career. And me to be able to do that, to go from low to high, was just those things in sport that we enjoy, and make it all that sweeter when you're able to bounce back and do those things.
So lots of ups and lots of downs, and you learn to appreciate the ups, that's for sure.
Speaking of those ups, you obviously played with and against so many brilliant sevens players over the years and different teams. You did finally select your top 7, your dream team. And now they're online, they're available. So let's quickly run through your selections and give us a quick note about each player.
Yeah, some of it was a bit of tongue in cheek, and a bit of fun. And The full packs sort of goes through it, and Jonah Longway speaks for himself. He does what he does. He's the man, so you couldn't have it without Jonah. The next one, Eric Rush, along with Serevi, probably synonymous with the game of sevens and the two forefathers of the game that we love. And I think the thing about Rushy that stood out for me, and a lot of things I mimicked to a degree, was his captaincy. He had the ability to make players play above what they thought they could play in their levels. I've seen it over a million times how he did that, and how the way he was able to motivate guys to go out and be their best. And it was a real feature of the type of player he was. The other guy, Frankie Horn. I couldn't go past my man Frankie Horn. I mean, everyone needs a dirty old four to go in there and do the tough stuff. And I reckon he's one of the toughest guys to play the game of seven. So I remember one time I was watching him and I was commentating, and I thought, there's no way I want to go down a dark alley and see that bloke at the end of it. He's just one of those dudes. But he's such the nicest guy, and the thing I got from Frankie is he's a guy that you want to go to war with. I don't know. Would that be right?
Yeah, absolutely spot on. In fact, I got an opportunity to choose a player to switch a jersey with. We at the US, we didn't give that many jerseys, and I found Frankie out because I obviously always admired his play as well. And surprisingly, the jersey barely fits me, and I'm a tiny unit, so I don't know how Frank the Tank got it over those muscular body of his.
Skin tights, eh? Those skin tights.
KT, you got to touch on your backs now. Which backs do you select in your dream team?
Yeah, well, I've got to add the other man, probably the best sevens player to ever grace the game, and Waisale. I mean, we spoke about Robin just sidestepping you 4 times in one game. Well, Serevi's done that to me, mate, on multiple occasions, multiple tournaments. But, I mean, it was an honour to be able to share the field with him, and Waisale, and you don't TV doesn't do him justice, I'll be honest with you. I mean, what he was able to do on a footy field was just unbelievable. And it's hard enough to win one player of the tournament in Hong Kong. To win 5, it just shows you the mark of how good he was. So, I mean, undoubtedly deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. So he was a no-brainer. Brian Limar played against Brian for a number of years here in New Zealand when he was playing this trade, and when he was the man. I mean, honestly, if I was marked on him, he played here in Auckland when I was up in North Harbour, and we had a thing called Battle of the Bridge. So I was North Harbour, here was Auckland, and he'd always be on the left wing. And for some reason, my right winger always decided to go for the left wing when they played Auckland because the chiropractor was on the side of Matt. The dude could hit, one of the biggest hitters in the international games. So 10 metres out was chip and chase. I didn't care. I'll go long. No way, I'm taking that up. So he was in there. He played sevens for a long time. He was an absolute ledge. He was Christian Cullen. Obviously had the hot stepper. More steps than
the Great Wall of China.
So Cully, I got a lot of love for Cully. We got brought up all school grades together. So for me, one of the best All Blacks ever, and he made his name in the game of sevens. And then we had our mate, Santiago Gomez Chorus. So obviously the guy who first to 200 in the game of sevens, scored 200 tries, and a lot of times I was playing, we'd always meet Argentina in the quarterfinals. So I had the envious task of having to mark Santier on a number of occasions. That's where he probably perfected his chip and chase, and that's probably why I moved into the first wide position. I just had to tackle after that. I got sick of getting chipped and chased off.
Oh my God, he's just the best.
I've got to say too, Dallen, thanks for putting me in your all-time team, mate.
Oh, there we go. Absolutely, KT. I mean, holy smokes. So listen to this. The best thing about that is, how tough it is selecting from all the eras. So now I had to go back 20 years, right? Of course, some current guys that are really special as well. But my bench had 4 backs and 1 forward. And so I'm like, KT can switch through both. He's strong, he's solid. So you'll be playing a lot of minutes when my 12 plays,
Oh, the money's gone through, by the way. I put the money into I've actually lifted. I've been in the line-out when Jonah was in the team. He'd go in the backs, and I had to go do his line-out lifting. What a nerd. Wait, hey, Zar Lawrence. How'd you come up with that? That one's out of the blue, old Zar.
Well, listen, so a lot of people forget. So, and this is what I preface. During the time I played, Zar Lawrence was unstoppable in the midfield. New Zealand won 48 games in a row. Victor Vito was on the wing, and a couple of people came in and out, but he was solid. With that era, Tamasi Thama and all those guys. So, I mean, at that point, 2007, 8, and 9, he was the man. Now, again, I know it's tricky because it's if you got to take 20 years into account. But all I do remember is he was quite the glue in that New Zealand team. A couple other players, obviously, that went on and did a lot of good things, like Tim Mickelson, but he really was really good. He actually messaged me as well saying, pal, send me your bank account. I'll send you rand, not dollars.
He'll send you monopoly money, that guy. But you're right, there's experience the guys that we play against, you know what I mean? That stands out, and on the field is very different to a lot of times what spectators see, those little things. Hey, I wouldn't mind seeing Robin's one. I want to see Robin's team.
My top 7?
Yeah.
You want to hear it now on the spot?
Oh, if you can.
Yeah. All right. Well, I got to have Frankie Horn. What's the big boy from Samoa a couple years ago? And I'm going to finish that sentence because that doesn't narrow it down. He helped them win the Cup final in Las Vegas in like 2012 or whatever. The
Trevor Reynos?
No, he's a monster. He was the captain for years. Basically, I call it the Samoan sidestep. The official one off the sideline, and the Canadian boys don't know what that is, right? I'd explain it, I'd show it, and then I literally show a video from this guy from 2012.
Not Lolo Louis.
No, not Lolo Louis. He's first receiver.
You're talking about one of the forwards, right? I mean, there's
one of the forwards, the monster. 2012.
Well, your team's not going anywhere. You don't even know who's in your team. You've listed one name.
We have put him on the spot, though, let's be honest.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's tough. I'll get back to you, though. I'll tweet them to you in the next few days here. Well, Hirayama, he chose William Ryder as the toughest player he's ever played against. What really blew me away, because he was 18 when he debuted, and I was an old man. A lot of the stories he talked about with us was 10, 15 years ago when he first started. So I don't know if he just thought of them as world beaters because he was so young then. There was a lot of legends in the history books when he first started, that's for sure.
What was a young Nate like, though? Because now he's the old man on tour.
You know what? He was I'll also send you a picture of his hair. He's going to kill me. He was at the University of Victoria with me. He was a first year. We got close to 180 guys in that program, Doug Tate. So Doug Tate would have been coaching Canada when you were around. And I met Nate, and I actually cornered him his first Canada trial because I had received a concussion. Illfully, I was cornering the young man to try and ask him how many games I played that day so I could tell the athletic therapist, because I wanted to get selected, and he held strong. But no, he was the same as he always was, KT. He was quiet. He was focused. Yeah. And the first pass he ever got, I think, was from me against Fiji when he debuted in Wellington. And it was a hospital pass, of course. He caught it with one hand, ducked under the next flying Fijian elbow, and threw a no-look pass to Phil McKenzie that went 90 meters. And I'm like, that kid is a class, because I would have just died. So he's just been flawless his whole career. And I remember we came back from walking after we'd gone through the customs, and he just found out he made the World Cup long list for 15s, and that was back in 2007. We just said to him, don't forget about us, and you're the prodigy. Like, we started calling him the prodigy, and he was just so humble, and he started laughing at us. And we were like, no, seriously, don't forget about us. And now we bump into him after a couple of beers at the Vancouver Sevens, and every time I see him, like, don't forget about us. Other final story with him that we talked about last week with Dallen was that his dad, Gary Hirayama, was part of the first Sevens team that ever played in Hong Kong, or the first ever Canadian Sevens team. So his dad was a legendary fly half in 15s and 7s for Canada. So he's a well-raised boy.
He might be, but listen, the best story is your hospital pass that you threw to him. So we'll come back to shredding you later, you know.
I wouldn't even put the arms on. You just keep running, arms down, protect yourself, stuff like that.
AT, I wanted to quickly ask you one thing about playing in those days, 20-minute finals. What was that like emotionally? And I know that obviously that the other team had to do the same. But again, you talk us through that, because that is one thing that has changed in recent years.
Yeah, we loved it. We absolutely loved it. You know, just through what Robin was talking about before, through our fitness levels, we knew we'd outlast anyone. Our mantra always was, we'll just get through the first 10 minutes and then reassess at halftime, because it's such a long time after 5 games. Switch mentally to 10 minutes. A lot of times that would break a lot of teams. You know, so for us, having to play it slow was fine for us. If we needed to speed it up, we were good with that because we backed our fitness, you know. So that was something we really looked forward to, you know, and especially that second 10, that was the one that got you. That's when you really went to deep waters and went to some dark places. But through those trainings that we put through, which we knew were harder than what we were going through at that particular time, that we had no excuse, you know. So we always made sure that we were prepared the best we could, and that at the back end of eating so well during the week, training so hard and replenishing ourselves, that 9 times out of 10, that second 10 minutes of their final was where those little things would add up, and we would normally win the day. So it was very much mentally a different mindset to what it is now, and us going through these finals and being able to commentate at such a short space. And I suppose the thing is too, like the game's seen as fast and promoted as fast, so taking it down to 7 minutes, it is a lot faster, whereas teams legitimately could slow the play down in the 20-minute final. But it was something that also was unique. Sometimes you couldn't do it now, obviously, but when we got injuries, that you could call on other teams that had been taken out, other countries, and get guys in there. So that was always a nice mix to be able to play with guys that you normally couldn't, because you're facing them for different countries. But when they had those pools, it was quite cool to experience that too.
I know I will say that's one of the most unique things, because I remember being actually on the reserve pool one year, and Matt Hawkins, a friend of mine for the USA, the polar bear, who'd go on and captain the USA, got in for Tonga and scored a try. So, like, only his resume, he's capped by Tonga and scored a try. A quick one little side story for you, Katie. You'll enjoy this. So, Vegas Sevens, 2011, 2012. Someone put my name down in the reserve pool again. This was before the reserve pool was cancelled. So I played for Tiger Rugby in the tournament, and we went really well, and we were done. So we went to the fines meeting, and we had a good time. This is Sunday, right? New Zealand are about to kick off in the cup final of the main Sevens World Series tournament, and my phone rings, and I'm like, hello, and someone's like, Dallen, we need you right now. New Zealand had a couple injuries in their semi-finals, and they need one more player on the bench. Can you come? And I'm like, sure, shove it up your ass, put the phone down. thinking it's one of my mates having a go. Phone rings again, same person. Dallen, I'm being dead serious. I'm like, sure you are. Have another jar, you little quackerburger, put it down. Having a few more drinks with the friends, and they're like, and someone's like they're about to play. They only look like they got 5 guys warming up, and I'm like, no, come on. And then I'm like, oh, maybe they were real. So I go and I jog down to the thing, and I just got beaten by another reserve pool player that answered their phone and thought it was serious and went in, and they got the full kit. They didn't get on the field, but they were on the side for the cup final. So I missed my chance.
Oh, man, you could have been a New Zealander. Anyway. Yeah, that's right. Top off on the haka. The quokka haka. Hey.
Titchy wouldn't have liked that. He would have made you do a beep test at halftime.
Oh, yeah. Even after the tournament, he'd be up there doing 150 shuttles, mate.
How many players was it when you first started in the series? Was it only traveling with
10, and you had your 3 subs, and once again, that's another thing that I know there seems to be a lot of injuries now, so they do need the extra guys, but that was another thing that I think separated a lot of sides, is having A, the depth of squad, and B, the fitness levels to maybe sometimes you only have limited bench, those 10 guys, 3 subs, and once you're on, and once you're off, so that was another thing you had to think about tactically as a coach.
Yeah, you only have 3 subs and that's it, and then you're playing 20-minute cup finals, war of attrition.
Yeah, and I think because the game sped up so much, that's probably why there are a lot more, I wouldn't say that's the main reason, but a lot of muscular injuries rather than real big broken bone injuries caused from more so the contact. So that's sped up the game, but it's also sped up the injury rate for mine as well. So I suppose sometimes, like I say, if you get some common sense around particular areas, it probably slows the game down a little bit, makes it more of a physical contest, so you probably can reload and reset your body a little bit rather than just doing 200 sprints back and forth.
Just switching back I'll tell you about my first tournament. I debuted in Dubai in 2005. My first game was against New Zealand. I came onto the bench in the second half, and my story was very long. I don't know if you ever watched the American movie Rudy.
Rudy, yeah.
So that was basically me. That's what they called me, because I got cut for 7 years. So I was too small. Anyway, I debuted against New Zealand, and I'm lined up against Amasio Valance, and then first touch of the ball spits out. Tefai Oasa, up in my grill, and I'm going to put the ball in the scrum again. But anyway, they were the class. And then obviously went to George after the competition. We were at that wilderness resort, and I had a couple quiet beers with Tefai Oasa, and I've been watching Amasio for years and years and years. And so I got to have a couple beers with them. And I remember I was so surprised that, first of all, they were allowed to have a couple beers. I don't know if they're allowed to, but I remember Amasio had a couple too many, and he was screaming up at the window to Titch, just singing him songs. And I was like, oh man, I was scared for him, and I was also scared for me that he'd do some repeaters. So such an inspiration. What was it like playing with him?
The way he come into the game, we had a training camp before the Commonwealth Games in Kuala Lumpur, and that was the first time Sevens had been brought into the Commonwealth Games. And we went to Sacred Heart College, which his college was, and we had a composite team, and one of the teachers said, hey, look, chuck this young kid in, he's pretty decent against us. So he carved us, absolutely smashed us up, 16 years old, wherever he was, 16 or 17. absolutely wasted us. And Titch said, mate, this kid's good. Chucked him in the training camp and ended up going to Kuala Lumpur and winning a gold medal, So it's right from that instance, he was just a man, and he'd always give Titch a bit of chirp, and we loved it, And he was always finding ways to try and upset Titch. And he's probably one of the worst trainers you'll ever experience. But as soon as the whistle went, that's when he switched on. He was the absolute man, and ended up being probably the premier playmaker New Zealand Sevens has ever had. And his battles with Serevi, when we used to go around, was a real feature. And he used to try and chirp at him too and upset Serevi, and a lot of times it worked. That was a multi-soul game. He was a smart man. And speaking about you coaching, he's coaching up here for North Harbour and doing a good job and giving back as well. So it's great to see him still involved with the game.
Yeah, I really learned to be more efficient. He would run 90 meters, and if he could stop and offload the ball, I mean, when he was playing against Canada, he would score a lot of tries, but he'd go 90 meters. He literally stopped to offload to some young winger to go the next 10 meters because he knows, day two, he's going to have to go that 100 meters or whatever. So he would only do as much or as little as he needed, which was classic Fijians in pool games in general, right? They work really, really smart. And then when they need to turn the key day two, it's just like another beast. And for me, I worked really, really hard and didn't work smart at all. So I learned a lot just from him running around me and putting on a show. It was incredible to watch.
Yeah, and that was a real feature of Wunji. You're exactly right. He'd do as little as possible, or just enough as required. And I actually played this old boy game about 3 or 4 years ago. And he still got the same step and still got the same dummy, but it still works to this day. It was actually really cool to see that he still got it. Like he'd throw the dummy and his stomach went with it, but so did all the players. So he's still the man on Wunji.
Your daughter's throwing a couple of dummies behind you right there, Goose. I can see her right now.
Yeah, she's supposed to be learning from home. She's TikToking and
the social media guru.
Yeah, she's supposed to be. She's thinking about doing sevens, but I don't think she's going.
Future Blackfern.
Yeah, she doesn't like training. So I train harder than her. Her mother trains harder than her.
So yeah, KT, winding a last couple of quick questions for you, my friend. Let's quickly stick with your missus right now. Actually, Fijian sensation. Obviously, you guys go to the islands a lot and holiday there, and the people of Fiji love having you. But does it cause it rather in the family when there's a big sevens game, NZ v Fiji for a cup final?
It hasn't really the last couple of years because Fiji have dominated New Zealand. So all I get with these is, of course, Fiji won, So, but since New Zealand's come back, she's given me the already just to the side here. She's making her lunch. Make me some too. Up there. She always knew when I was playing what side the bed was butted on. She knew the NZAE was paying the bill, so New Zealand was number one. But now she switched their colours and back to Fiji, which is fair enough, her homeland. So it's we always have some decent debates, and we're just over there beginning of the year in my mate's tournament, the Coral Coast Sevens, and she got interviewed about that exact same question, whether we have debates. But the thing was, she couldn't remember actually doing the interview. She had too many carvers. It wasn't until one of her cousins put it to her on Facebook and put the article up that she remembered.
Oh, shredded, absolutely shredded. I love it. Now, pal, listen. Let's fast forward to Rugby World Cup 2019 last year, iconic event, and you as the first Maori to commentate on the world feed, the whole tournament all the way through to the final. What does it mean to you, your community, and family?
Yeah, no, it was huge. It was huge for me, and a real moment, that I was proud of. I told the old man and mum, and they were really stoked, So to get the opportunity to do that, I know you were there, Dallen, and commentating, and being able to be at the premier event of rugby is always something special, So for me, being Indigenous Māori from New Zealand, be able to be the first one to do sideline for World Rugby all the way through from game one to the final was something that I was really proud of. It's taken a lot of hard yards, a lot of hard sacrifices, a lot of time away from the families to be able to get to this point, So it's been good 12, 14 odd years to last year to be able to reach those goals. Was always something that I thought would never be achievable, to call a World Cup final, let alone be at a World Cup, So it's always been a dream of mine to be able to achieve that, It's like in rugby, it's something that you really cherish, and like now can look back on and be really proud of. And we've seen it already on the Seven circuit in Cape Town, where we had the first male commentator from Fiji come on and commentate a game with Ice Katani Whale, So hopefully it leads away for a lot of people here in New Zealand, a lot of people in the Pacific say, hey, look, if I my career's finished or I still want to be involved in the game, then broadcasting is something can have a go. Then look, the guy from South Africa's made it to the World Cup, and the guy from New Zealand's made it to the World Cup, and part of that, and be one of the first to do that's always nice and something to cherish.
Oh, Katie, it was brilliant, inspirational stuff to see that, and you got your dreadlocks flowing in the wind, and definitely it's amazing how many different things you've been involved in, my pal. Now, across that journey, you've met some famous people along the way. You were partying with a Hoff in Los Angeles. Who would you say is the most famous person you've met through your rugby interactions?
Besides Dallen.
I was going to say the big Stanford.
Well, how many people do you know? How many people can open a bottle of wine with their shoe? I mean, that's number one, and all run up a wall and land at Matrix style.
Or get to the Backstreet Boys backstage. I'm figuring that one out. I still don't know. I'm still jealous, actually. But we're really lucky. To mix with some pretty cool people. I mean, met Sir Alex Ferguson, Manchester United, David Beckham, all those dudes. And the Hofstills up there. Hemsworth met on Thor a couple of years ago at BC Place. So that was always cool. But, I think the thing is just being able to mix with a eclectic bunch of people, wherever it may be, whether it be BC Place or in Cape Town, and for me, that's the real thrill. I mean, it's easy to get up for someone famous, but I think what really spins my wheels is being able to just talk to local people and be able to vibe with them and mix and mingle with them and have a good time with them, because that's where you get the real enjoyment from it, is the real rugby people, and that's something I'll always remember and cherish and take away, whether it be playing or lucky enough doing what we do now. And one particular instance, I was walking out outside of Cape Town Stadium this year, and Mr. Oosthuizen, the young lad who was playing, his dad came up to me and said he wanted me to say it properly, Oosthuizen. But that was the one thing he wanted me to get right, to pass it on to the other commentators. So proud, watching the young fire and being able to come and just have a chat and have a bit of laugh over that. It was really cool, and there's something probably more so stands out for me than the Hoff, because the Hoff, he's just nuts.
Exactly. Well, hold on. Are you shredding me? Because I was telling you how to say Oosthuizen, but I go really Afrikaans on them too sometimes,
Yeah, exactly right. So, I think Dad just wanted to have a chat, I'll be honest with you. And it was really cool, man. So I'll be actually the same with one of my kids was representing. So, good on him.
For those listeners out there can't be anything harder than to commentate on the World Series with 16 to sometimes 20 or 24 countries at a Sevens World Cup or 15s World Cup. How do you manage to enunciate all those hard words?
Yeah, well, we get usually get the team lists half a day before they come out, and Dallen and I are quite lucky because I've been on the circuit a little while now, so you do get to be able to do it repetitively. But by going to a situation where we have a new team, we make sure as commentators that we go through together as a group, or go to an expert who's able to speak that particular language, or talk to the managers, or go up to one of the team managers in the hotel and speak to someone that we know, so we get it grammatically correct. Because I think for us it's important, because I know if someone said my name wrong when I was playing, I'll be pretty disappointed, because my family are watching, so would you, Robin, and so would you, Dallen, So for us as broadcasters, that's the main thing we want to get right, because once it's out there for life, and that's the least we can try and do, is try and pronounce it properly for the families and friends watching at home, because it's a big moment to represent your colours, and because we know how hard it takes to get there personally. So I think that's something that we really make a point of, to get that right, and everyone's really accommodating about that, and running into Dad, like I said, Oosthuizen, poke that out, and and that's something we can all sort of get along to. And it's sometimes like when it's hard when you see the players and you pronounce their name, and then after pronouncing it 2 years at one particular way, then the uncles and their families come up and go, well, it's actually this, So sometimes that's probably the hardest, when you get into a habit and having to change it like that. Because the guy, Tony Ing Shu, how he thought it was pronounced, and he said it was pronounced that way. And then one of the family members come up to me at the airport and said it's actually Ngashu. So it's just those little tricky things that you sort of have to be aware of. Are probably more hard once you've laid that habit in. But something we try and make a point. They tell them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, Robin, we spend most of our time probably going through the pronunciations from all the different teams. And Katie's so right. When there are new teams, you really try and make a real effort. But then, some of the names change, like Scott Riddell or Riddle. He had two different names at different times. And I feel bad that we obviously at some point said it incorrectly. But for the most time, of the 3,000 names we say, we get most of them right, which is good.
Yeah, but sometimes there's one particular commentator would just do his own buzz and pronounce guys that aren't there, and we'll be looking around going, Part of the 17th team. Let's go.
Dallen and I are getting used to our different lingos. He's got a bit of a South African USA mix, and I'm kind of a hybrid from Western Canada, Central Canada, Italy, France, you name it. So we're developing our own language.
Yeah, hard out. Well, I reckon. Well, that's what I'm trying to develop now, an app just so it comes up with what Dallen is actually saying.
Oh, come on, you green millies. You don't know what a green millie is?
Well, he texts
green millie.
half the things he texts me. I'm like, what is this? And you can't look it up. So he just sends me. It's amazing. Or he'll be like, you should ask the guest this or call him this. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. So I'm not picking that fight.
KT, I said, one of the things I'm like, he rounds people like park cars. And he's like, sorry, I don't get your joke. What are you trying to say?
But so Thomas Stepton, one else standing stationary, park cars.
Okay, so last question for me. What is your favorite sevens tournament to commentate and why on the World Series?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Get asked this all the time. For me, Hong Kong's always held something special. You know, like I grew up watching Hong Kong at home and getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning and watching the final and seeing a lot of my mates launch their careers from there. And first time I stepped on Song Kong Post Stadium, I knew it was something special. You know, just the tradition that's gone there. So for me, I equate it to being like a Wimbledon for tennis. It's just something unique, or Augusta in the golf. You know, it's just something that sets it apart from everywhere else. And not many people get to say that they won at a Hong Kong or even played there. So just something mystical about the joint, and it's a place I always have fond memories of, win or lose, and always enjoy going back there. And, you know, hopefully my mate on the other side here, Dallen, he's never commentated on Hong Kong. So hopefully it goes at the end of the year, we're all good and your border's open so he can do that and experience that, because it's a really unique place and I love him to be able to do that, you know. So for me, it's got to be HK.
Yeah, KT, I was going to say that one, and also commentating your son. That was also on my list of things to hopefully accomplish one day. And the man at the Old Glory DC, how's he doing?
Yeah, no, he's doing all right. He's doing his online thing at the moment. He's mad into gaming, so him and his cohorts again amongst that. And yeah, they're still flinging some rubbish over the Instas, all those nutters, because he had a really good team there. I mean, I'll be honest, they had a really good bunch of boys who was able to go watch a game and had a lot of Kiwis in their backline. It's basically New Zealand backline, apart from they had the Canadian winger there, Doug Fraser, Dougie Fresh was there. No, they had a really good vibe, those young men. So hopefully, I'm sure he's keen to go back there and this with the same club. Hopefully it is. It might be one in the win. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But there's talk Dan Carter might be coming to New York.
Yeah, listen, I reshared that and then as a joke, right? Because I saw the article and then underneath Carter did eventually write on social media saying, I've never been approached. So obviously it's just clickbait. I even put a photo of Dan and myself. It was when the All Blacks played USA many years ago. And people, obviously, this is the thing about people. They don't read the article. They just see something and they're like, oh, it's real. And everybody's commenting. But you got to throw a few clickbaits out there from time to time.
Well, how's this? Tomasi Tama come out with his all-time New Zealand Sevens team. I was lucky enough to be in it. So I just reshared it. Next minute, all these people started going at me. Should have had him in there. Should have had him in there. Should have had him. It's not my team.
Exactly.
It's someone else's. I just reshared it. Far real.
People these days. Oh, goodness.
Oh, it's getting slagged.
It is. Listen, KT, I don't want to take up any more of your time, but I want to thank you so much for joining us on this Rugby Hive podcast. We really appreciate your insight. You're one of our favorite people to commentate with and travel the world. As I said, just so many good times we've had on the road and hopefully lots more to come.
Hey, thank you very much, boys. No, I really enjoyed it. No, it's awesome. Robin, keep coaching up, and Dallen, you'll get there one day, son.
Hey, again, I've been rounded like a park car, but nobody knows what that means, so it's fine, you know?
It's awesome, boys. Really enjoyed it.
Good.
Beautiful ball over the top. Yes, Seppo!
Thank you for listening, you sleek sensations.
If you haven't already, please subscribe to Rugby Hive Podcast and catch us on all the socials at Rugby Hive.
We appreciate your support. Be safe out there, and we'll see you soon.
They've taken the lunch money from Sunday.